Richard stood by the tall windows of his apartment, looking down at the city lights below. Everything in his life looked perfect from the outside. He owned successful businesses, lived in a penthouse that most people only saw in magazines, and had more money than he could spend in 3 lifetimes. But none of it mattered anymore. 3 years ago, his wife died in a terrible accident. One moment she was there, laughing at breakfast, kissing their daughter goodbye. The next moment, a phone call changed everything forever. Since that day, Richard felt like he was just going through the motions of living, not actually living at all. His daughter Lily was only 7 years old now. She'd been 4 when her mother died. Barely old enough to understand what death meant, Richard watched helplessly as his bright, chatty little girl slowly became quiet and distant. She stopped singing the silly songs her mother taught her. She stopped drawing the colorful pictures that used to cover their refrigerator. She stopped being a child. Richard tried everything. He hired the best nannies money could buy. Each one came with perfect references and impressive credentials. But Lily wouldn't connect with any of them. She wasn't rude or mean. She was just absent, going through her days like a tiny robot, eating when told to eat, going to bed when told to sleep, but never really there. The nannies lasted a few weeks each before quitting. Some said Lily was too difficult. Others said she needed therapy, not a nanny. One woman actually cried when she gave her notice, saying she felt like she was failing the poor child but didn't know how to reach her. That one hurt Richard the most because he felt exactly the same way. His mother visited one Sunday afternoon. She watched Lily sitting alone in her room, staring out the window at nothing in particular. Then she pulled Richard into the kitchen and spoke in that direct way only mothers can manage. "That child needs a mother," she said firmly. "I know, Mom. I miss her too," Richard replied, his throat tight. "No, listen to me. Lily needs a mother figure in her life. You need to start dating again. Find someone who can—" "I can't," Richard cut her off. The thought of replacing his wife made him feel sick. His mother sighed. "I'm not saying replace her. I'm saying that child is drowning, and you're drowning trying to save her, and neither of you is getting anywhere." "You need help," they argued for an hour. Richard refused to consider dating. The whole idea felt wrong, too soon, disrespectful somehow. But his mother was stubborn. She kept pushing until, finally exhausted, Richard made a terrible deal with her just to end the conversation. "Fine," he said, "but I'm not going on dates. If I'm going to do this, Lily gets to choose." His mother looked confused. "What do you mean?" "If someone is going to be in Lily's life, she should have a say. Actually, she should have the only say. I'll arrange for some women to spend time with us, and Lily can decide if any of them feel right. If she doesn't like anyone, that's the end of it." His mother thought this was a strange approach, but she agreed. She even helped arrange it, reaching out to women in their social circle who were single and might be interested. Richard felt disgusted with himself the entire time, like he was shopping for a wife instead of finding a genuine connection. But he was desperate. Watching Lily fade away a little more each day was killing him. Within 2 weeks, 5 women had agreed to spend a weekend at Richard's beach house in the Hamptons. They were all models or worked in similar fields. Beautiful, successful women who moved in the same wealthy circles Richard did. His assistant called them interview candidates in emails, which made Richard cringe every time he read it. The weekend was planned with military precision. Beach activities on Saturday morning. Horseback riding in the afternoon. A nice dinner that evening, Sunday brunch, then a relaxed day around the house. Plenty of opportunities for the women to interact with Lily in different settings. It all sounded completely ridiculous when Richard thought about it, but he didn't have any better ideas. Grace had worked for Richard's family for 2 years. She came to the penthouse 3 mornings each week to clean. She was from Jamaica originally, had moved to New York 15 years ago looking for better opportunities. She had a son in college that she was incredibly proud of, though Richard only knew this because he'd overheard her on the phone once. Grace didn't talk much about her personal life. She just did her work quietly and efficiently, but Grace noticed things. She noticed that Lily never finished her breakfast. She noticed the drawings hidden under the bed, sad pictures of a little girl standing alone. She noticed how Lily jumped whenever someone raised their voice, even slightly. She noticed that all of Lily's toys were arranged perfectly on the shelves, barely touched, like they were in a store display. Grace had raised her own son alone after his father left when the boy was just 2 years old. She knew what a struggling child looked like. She knew the difference between a child who was being difficult and a child who was barely holding on. Lily was the latter. Sometimes when Richard was in his home office on long conference calls, Grace would find Lily wandering the apartment aimlessly. Grace never made a big deal about it. She'd just say hello and keep working. Sometimes Lily would watch her dust or organize things. Sometimes Lily would ask small questions. Why do you fold the towels that way? Or, what's that song you're humming? Grace always answered simply and honestly. She never used that fake, cheerful voice that so many adults used with children. She never talked down to Lily or tried to force conversation. She just treated her like a small person who deserved respect. And slowly, Lily started to relax a tiny bit when Grace was around. On Thursday, Richard called Grace into his home office. She stood politely by the door, wondering if she'd done something wrong. This weekend I'm having guests at the beach house, Richard explained. 5 guests plus Lily and myself. I need you to come along to help with meals and keep the house organized. I'll pay you triple your usual rate. Can you do that? Grace needed the money. She always needed the money. Between rent, her son's college expenses, and her mother's medical bills back in Jamaica, there was never enough. Yes, sir. I can do that. Good. We leave Friday afternoon. Pack enough clothes for the weekend. You'll stay in the staff quarters. Grace nodded and left, already mentally rearranging her schedule. She'd have to call her other employers and tell them she couldn't come next week. She'd have to make sure her son had enough food in the apartment. She'd have to. Well, she'd figure it out. She always did. Friday afternoon, they drove out to the Hamptons in Richard's SUV. Lily sat in the back, staring out the window. Richard made a few attempts at conversation, asking about school and if she was excited about the weekend. Lily gave one-word answers that killed each conversation before it could start. Grace sat in the front passenger seat, uncomfortable in this unfamiliar role. Usually she was invisible, arriving after the family left and finishing before they returned. Being included in a family trip, even as staff, felt strange. The beach house was stunning. 3 stories of glass and white wood right on the ocean. Grace had seen photos of places like this but never imagined she'd actually step inside one. Richard showed her to a small but comfortable room on the ground floor near the kitchen. The guests arrive tomorrow morning, Richard said. Just do what you normally do. Make breakfast, keep the common areas tidy, prepare meals. I've hired a catering company to deliver most of the food, so you'll just need to handle the setup and serving. Yes, sir. And Grace? Richard paused. Lily seems comfortable around you. If you get a chance to talk with her this weekend, I'd appreciate it. She doesn't open up to many people. Grace nodded, though she felt a heavy weight settle in her chest. She was starting to understand what this weekend was really about, and it made her deeply sad. That evening, Grace made a simple dinner of pasta and salad. Lily ate a little more than usual, which Grace noticed but didn't comment on. After dinner, Richard retreated to his study for business calls. Lily wandered into the kitchen where Grace was cleaning up. Can I help? Lily asked quietly. Grace smiled. Sure, sweetie. You can dry these plates for me if you want. They worked in silence for a while. Then Lily spoke so softly Grace almost missed it. They're coming tomorrow, aren't they? The ladies? Yes, Grace answered honestly. Do you think any of them will be nice? Grace's heart broke a little. I'm sure they'll all try to be nice. That's not the same thing, Lily said with the wisdom of a child who'd learned too young that trying and being are different things. No, Grace agreed. It's not the same thing at all. Saturday morning arrived bright and clear. Grace woke before dawn and started preparing breakfast. Fresh fruit, pastries from the expensive bakery delivery, eggs, bacon, juice, coffee. Everything perfect. The women arrived in a flurry of designer luggage and expensive perfume. Grace watched from the kitchen as Richard greeted them. They were all stunning, like something from a fashion magazine. Confident and polished and completely out of Grace's world. There was Lauren, who had a huge following on social media. She immediately took photos of the house for her account. There was Catherine, who'd walked runways in Paris and Milan. There was Rebecca, an actress who Grace vaguely recognized from a commercial. There was Christina, who came from old money and modeled for charity events. And there was Nicole, who'd been in some famous swimsuit magazine. They descended on Lily like a perfectly coordinated attack. All smiles and compliments. Oh my God, your hair is gorgeous. What a beautiful dress. Your dad's house is amazing, isn't it? Lily sat frozen at the breakfast table, her face blank. Grace served the food and watched. She saw Lauren check her phone at least 30 times in 20 minutes. She saw Catherine recoil slightly when Lily accidentally knocked over a glass of orange juice, barely catching it before it spilled on Catherine's white designer outfit. She saw Rebecca speak to Lily in that high-pitched voice people use with babies. She saw Christina mostly ignore Lily completely, focusing all her attention on Richard. Only Nicole seemed genuinely trying to connect. She asked Lily real questions about school and books, but even her kindness felt rehearsed somehow, like she was following advice from an article about connecting with children. Grace cleared the plates quietly, invisible as always. But she wasn't invisible to Lily. Their eyes met briefly, and Grace saw the panic there. The overwhelming sense of being trapped in a performance she never auditioned for. This was going to be a very long weekend. After breakfast, Richard announced they'd all head to the beach. The women changed into designer swimwear that probably cost more than Grace made in a month. Lily put on her swimsuit reluctantly, moving slowly like she was walking to her own execution. Grace stayed behind to clean up the kitchen and prepare lunch for later. Through the window, she could see the group making their way down to the private beach. The 5 women looked like they'd stepped out of a magazine shoot, laughing and talking animatedly with Richard. Lily trailed behind, small and alone despite being surrounded by people. Grace washed dishes and tried not to think about how wrong this all felt. It wasn't her place to judge. Richard was trying to help his daughter in the only way he knew how. But Grace had seen enough of life to know that you can't schedule healing. You can't interview someone to love your child. Love doesn't work that way. An hour later, Grace was preparing sandwiches when she heard shouting from the beach. She looked out to see people running along the shoreline. Her stomach dropped. She dried her hands quickly and headed outside. Richard was pacing frantically, his phone pressed to his ear. The 5 women stood in a cluster, looking worried but also annoyed, like this inconvenience was ruining their carefully planned day. "What happened?" Grace asked. "Lily's gone," Richard said, his face pale. "One minute she was there, the next she just vanished. I'm calling security. Did anyone see which direction she went?" "We weren't really watching," Lauren admitted, then immediately looked guilty for saying it out loud. Grace's mind raced. A little girl, sad and overwhelmed, surrounded by strangers trying too hard. Where would she go? Not far, probably. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere safe. Somewhere that felt like... "I'll check the house," Grace said, already moving. She searched the obvious places first. Lily's bedroom, the bathrooms, the living room, nothing. Then Grace remembered something. When they'd arrived yesterday, Richard had given them a quick tour. There was a small chapel on the property, tucked away near the garden. The previous owner had been religious and built it as a meditation space. Richard had mentioned it almost apologetically, like he was embarrassed by it. Grace walked quickly through the garden path. The chapel was small, barely bigger than a shed, with a few wooden pews and a simple altar. And there, curled up on the front pew, was Lily. The child wasn't crying loudly. She was crying the way kids do when they've learned that crying doesn't bring help, silent tears running down her face, her whole body shaking with the effort of keeping quiet. On the altar was a framed photo. Richard's wife, Lily's mother. Someone had placed fresh flowers there, probably the groundskeeper, not knowing the significance. Grace didn't say anything at first. She just sat down on the pew next to Lily, leaving some space between them. They sat in silence for several minutes, the only sound Lily's quiet sniffles and the distant ocean waves. Finally, Lily spoke. "They're all pretending." "I know," Grace said softly. "Daddy's pretending this will fix things. Those ladies are pretending they like me. Everyone's pretending everything's okay." Lily wiped her nose with the back of her hand. "But it's not okay. Nothing's okay." Grace reached into her pocket and pulled out a tissue, handing it to Lily. "You're right. It's not okay. Then why is everyone acting like it is? Because sometimes when things hurt too much, adults don't know what else to do. So they make plans and arrange things and try to control everything. It makes them feel like they're helping even when they're not." Lily looked at Grace with red, swollen eyes. "My mom used to say that people show you who they really are when they think nobody important is watching." Grace felt her own eyes sting with tears. "Your mom sounds like she was a smart lady." She was. Lily looked back at the photo. "Those ladies don't talk to me the same way when Dad's around versus when he's not." Lauren basically ignores me until Dad looks over. Then suddenly she's all interested. Catherine acts like I'm going to mess up her clothes. Rebecca talks to me like I'm stupid. Christina doesn't even look at me. And Nicole is trying really hard, but it feels fake, you know? Like she read a book about how to talk to kids. You're very observant, Grace said. I have to be. When you're a kid, adults lie all the time and expect you to just believe them. They think we can't tell. Lily pulled her knees up to her chest. But I can tell. I can always tell. Grace understood exactly what Lily meant. She'd raised her son in neighborhoods where you learned early to read people, to know who was safe and who wasn't, who meant what they said, and who was just running a game. Children from hard situations grew up fast that way. Lily had lost her mother young. She'd been forced to grow up fast too. Can I tell you something? Grace asked. From one person who sees through the pretending to another. Lily nodded. Your dad loves you very much. He's doing all this because he's scared. He watches you hurting and he can't fix it. And that's the worst feeling in the world for a parent. So he's trying everything he can think of. Even the things that don't make sense. He's not doing it to hurt you. He's doing it because he doesn't know what else to do. I know he loves me, Lily said quietly, but that doesn't make this okay. I don't want a new mom from his friend group. I don't want someone who's going to pretend to care about me to get to him. I just want, she trailed off. What do you want? I want someone who sees me, really sees me, not just when someone's watching. Not just when it benefits them, just sees me. Lily looked at Grace. Like you do. Before Grace could respond, she heard Richard calling Lily's name, his voice frantic and getting closer. Grace stood up. We should let your dad know you're okay. He's really worried. Lily stood too, wiping her eyes one more time. He's going to be mad. Maybe. But he'll be more relieved than mad. Come on. They walked back to the main house together. Richard was heading toward them, and when he saw Lily, his face transformed from panic to relief to anger in rapid succession. Lily, what were you thinking? You can't just run off like that. Do you have any idea how worried I was? I'm sorry, Lily said flatly. In that tone kids use when they're not actually sorry but know they're supposed to say it. Grace found her in the chapel. Grace interjected quickly, trying to diffuse the situation. She's fine. Just needed some quiet time. Richard looked at Grace, then back at Lily. Some of the anger drained from his face, replaced by exhaustion. We'll talk about this later. The ladies are worried about you too. Come say hello so they know you're all right. Lily walked back to the beach with Richard. Her shoulders slumped in defeat. Grace watched them go, feeling helpless. The rest of Saturday limped along awkwardly. Lunch was tense, with Richard trying too hard to make conversation and Lily responding in monosyllables. The afternoon horseback riding didn't go much better. Lily chose the most spirited horse in the stable. A beautiful chestnut that the stable hand warned was probably too much for a child her age. She'll be fine, Richard said, not wanting to contradict his daughter in front of the guests. Lily rode off ahead of the group, pushing the horse into a gallop that left everyone behind. By the time they caught up with her at the far end of the property, she was dismounting alone, her face flushed but triumphant. Young lady, that was dangerous, Richard started. But I didn't fall, Lily shot back. I'm a good rider. Mom taught me. And there it was, the ghost at the table, the absence that filled every room. Richard's wife had been an excellent horsewoman. She'd started teaching Lily almost as soon as the girl could walk. It was one of their special things together. The women exchanged uncomfortable glances. This was getting too real, too emotional. They'd signed up for a pleasant weekend with a wealthy, attractive widower, not this complicated maze of grief and family trauma. That evening, Grace prepared an elaborate dinner that the catering company had delivered. Steaks, roasted vegetables, fresh salads, expensive wine for the adults. She set the dining room table with the good china and crystal glasses. Dinner was painful to watch. Richard tried to facilitate conversation, asking each woman about their work and interests. They responded with practiced charm, telling amusing anecdotes and laughing at all the right moments. Lily sat silent, pushing food around her plate. Catherine made an effort. Lily, your father tells me you like to read. What kind of books do you enjoy? Different kinds, Lily said without looking up. I used to love fairy tales when I was your age. Do you like those? Not really. What about adventure stories? Sometimes, it was like pulling teeth. Catherine eventually gave up, turning her attention back to Richard with a sympathetic look that said, "I tried." Grace served dessert and coffee, moving around the table silently. As she placed a slice of chocolate cake in front of Lily, their eyes met. Lily's expression was desperate, pleading, like a prisoner begging for rescue. After dinner, the adults moved to the living room for drinks. Richard suggested Lily get ready for bed. Grace was cleaning up the dining room when Lily appeared in the doorway. "Can I help?" she asked. "It's late, sweetheart. You should do what your dad said and get ready for bed." "I'm not tired, please." Grace couldn't say no to that face. "All right, you can help me in the kitchen." They worked side by side, Grace washing dishes and Lily drying them carefully. From the living room came the sound of adult laughter, music playing softly, the clink of glasses. "They're having fun," Lily observed. "Yes, they are. Dad sounds happy. I haven't heard him laugh like that in a long time." There was something in Lily's voice, not quite sadness, not quite resentment, maybe guilt. Grace glanced at her. "It's okay for your dad to be happy," Grace said gently. "I know. I want him to be happy." Lily set down a dried plate. "But I don't want him to be happy because he's pretending, and that's what this is, all of this. Pretending that if he just finds the right person, everything will be like it was before. But it won't be. It can't be." "No," Grace agreed. "It won't be the same. But maybe, eventually, it could be something different. Not better or worse, just different." "Do you really believe that?" Grace thought about her own life, her husband leaving, raising her son alone, the years of struggling, working multiple jobs, wondering if things would ever get easier. They had gotten different. Not easier exactly, but different in ways that brought their own kind of good along with the hard. "Yeah," Grace said. "I do believe that. But I also believe you can't force it. It happens when it happens, not when you schedule it." Lily smiled for the first time all day. "You should tell my dad that." "I don't think your dad wants advice from his housekeeper." "Why not? You're smarter than any of those ladies out there." "That's sweet, but I'm serious. You don't pretend. You tell the truth even when it's not what people want to hear. That's worth more than being pretty or famous or whatever." Grace felt her throat tighten. "You need to get some sleep. Tomorrow's another big day." "Yeah," Lily said, her smile fading. "Another day of pretending." After Lily went upstairs, Grace finished cleaning the kitchen and retreated to her room. She could still hear voices from the living room, laughter and conversation flowing freely. She wondered what Richard was thinking, if any of these women felt right to him, if he was actually interested or just going through the motions because he'd committed to this plan. She wondered what would happen tomorrow, when the weekend ended and Richard had to make a decision. She wondered what would happen to Lily, that perceptive, wounded little girl who deserved so much more than a rehearsed mother figure chosen from a lineup. Most of all, Grace wondered why she cared so much. This wasn't her family. Lily wasn't her daughter. This whole situation wasn't her problem. She was just the help, paid to clean and cook and stay invisible. But some children break your heart whether you want them to or not. And Lily had broken hers completely. Sunday morning came too quickly. Grace woke early as always and started preparing breakfast. She made pancakes from scratch the way her own mother had taught her back in Jamaica. The smell filled the kitchen, warm and comforting. She heard footsteps on the stairs and expected to see Richard coming down for his morning coffee. Instead, it was Lily, still in her pajamas, hair messy from sleep. "You're up early," Grace said. "Couldn't sleep much." Lily climbed onto one of the kitchen stools. "Can I have some pancakes?" "Of course." "Orange juice?" "Yes, please." Grace poured the juice and flipped a pancake onto a plate, adding butter and syrup. She set it in front of Lily and went back to cooking. They didn't talk at first. The silence was comfortable, easy. After a few bites, Lily spoke. "My mom used to make pancakes on Sundays. Not as good as these, though. She always burned them a little." Grace smiled. "My son used to say mine were too thick. He liked the thin ones from the diner better. Kids always think someone else's cooking is better." You have a son? Yes. He's in college now, studying engineering. Do you miss him? Grace paused, spatula in hand. Every single day, but I'm proud of him too. He's doing something with his life, making something of himself. Was it hard, raising him by yourself? Grace looked at Lily, surprised by the directness of the question. But Lily's face was genuinely curious, not prying. Just a child trying to understand how the world worked. Yes, Grace answered honestly. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. There were times I didn't think we'd make it. Times I worked 3 jobs and still couldn't pay all the bills. Times he asked for things I couldn't give him and I felt like the worst mother in the world. But you kept going. I kept going. Because that's what you do when you love someone. You keep going even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Lily ate another bite of pancake, thinking. Those ladies upstairs don't know what hard is. That's not fair. Everyone has their own struggles. You can't see what's inside someone's life just by looking at the outside. Maybe. But I bet none of them ever had to work 3 jobs. I bet they never worried about paying bills or making things work. Lily looked up at Grace. You're stronger than all of them. Before Grace could respond, Richard walked into the kitchen. He stopped in the doorway, taking in the scene. His daughter, actually eating breakfast and talking. Really talking. More animated than he'd seen her in months. And Grace, treating her like a person instead of a fragile thing that might break. Good morning, he said carefully, not wanting to disrupt whatever was happening. Morning, Dad. Grace made pancakes. They're really good. I can smell that. Richard poured himself coffee. Did you sleep okay? Fine. The word was short, guarded. Lily's walls went back up the moment Richard entered the room. Grace saw it happen, saw the girl retreat back into herself. The moment was broken. The other women started coming downstairs, one by one, and the kitchen filled with noise and perfume and forced cheerfulness. Grace served pancakes and fruit and tried to stay invisible again. Brunch lasted forever. The women chatted about their plans for the upcoming week, fashion shows and photo shoots and social events. They complimented the food and the house, and Richard's excellent taste. Lily ate in silence, her earlier openness completely gone. After brunch, Richard suggested everyone relax by the pool. It was a beautiful day, sunny and warm with a light breeze off the ocean. Perfect weather that felt mocking somehow, too cheerful for the tension hanging over everything. Grace cleared the dishes and started cleaning up. Through the windows, she could see the group outside. The women posed by the pool like they were on a photo shoot, laughing and sipping mimosas. Richard sat in a lounge chair, trying to look relaxed but clearly distracted. And Lily sat apart from everyone, her feet dangling in the water, alone in a crowd. Around 2 o'clock, Richard came back inside. He found Grace in the kitchen, putting away the last of the clean dishes. Grace, can I talk to you for a minute? Of course, sir. He sat down at the kitchen island, suddenly looking exhausted. The confident businessman was gone, replaced by a tired, confused father. I need your honest opinion about something, he said. Grace dried her hands on a towel, uncomfortable. I'm not sure that's appropriate, sir. Please. I'm asking you as someone who sees my daughter clearly, not as an employee. Richard rubbed his face. This whole weekend has been a disaster, hasn't it? Grace chose her words carefully. It's been difficult. That's a polite way of putting it. Richard laughed bitterly. Lily won't talk to any of them. She barely talks to me. The only person she seems comfortable with is you. Why is that, I think? Grace hesitated. I think maybe because I don't want anything from her. Those ladies, they're trying to impress you through her. And children can sense that. They know when someone is using them to get to someone else. But they're not bad people. They're successful, smart, kind women. I'm not saying they're bad people. I'm just saying that trying to choose a mother for your child like you're hiring an employee. It doesn't work that way. Love doesn't work that way. Richard was quiet for a long moment. My mother said I needed to start dating again, that Lily needs a mother figure. I thought if I let Lily choose, it would be better. I thought I was giving her control over the situation. But you're not giving her control. You're giving her a menu of options that you already selected. That's different, so what do? I can't just let her stay like this, withdrawn and sad all the time. I have to do something. Grace sat down across from him, forgetting for a moment that he was her employer, and she was supposed to stand respectfully. Can I tell you what I think is really happening? Please. I think you're both stuck in your grief, and you're both so busy trying to protect each other that neither of you is actually healing. You think if you find her a mother, she'll be happy again. She thinks if she stays quiet and doesn't cause problems, you'll be okay. But neither of you is really dealing with the fact that your wife, her mother, is gone. And until you both face that, nothing else is going to work. Richard stared at her. No one had said it that directly before. Therapists had danced around it with professional language. His mother had scolded and pushed. Friends had offered sympathy and advice. But no one had just laid it out plain and simple like that. He stopped. That's probably true. I'm sorry if I overstepped, Grace said quickly, remembering her place. No, you didn't. You told me what I needed to hear, not what I wanted to hear. There's a difference. Richard looked out the window at the women by the pool. I should probably end this charade, shouldn't I? That's not for me to say, sir. But if it was? Grace thought about Lily's face that morning, open and real. Then she thought about Lily's face at brunch, closed and guarded. I think your daughter is drowning, and throwing her a rope made of fake smiles and rehearsed kindness isn't going to save her. She needs something real, something honest. Richard nodded slowly. I'm going to tell them. After dinner tonight. I'll thank them for coming and send them home in the morning. This was a mistake. What will you tell Lily? The truth. That I messed up. That I don't have all the answers. That we need to figure this out together, not through some arranged situation. Richard looked at Grace. Thank you. For being honest with me, and for being kind to Lily. She's had so little kindness lately that didn't come with strings attached. Grace felt her eyes sting with tears. She's a special girl. She deserves the world. Yes, she does. The afternoon dragged on. Grace prepared an early dinner since the women would be leaving in the morning. Richard seemed distracted, clearly thinking about what he was going to say. The women sensed something was off but couldn't quite figure out what. Lily disappeared again after lunch. This time Richard knew where to look. He found her in the chapel, sitting in the same spot as yesterday. Can I sit with you? He asked from the doorway. Lily shrugged, which Richard took as a yes. He sat down next to her, both of them staring at the photo of his wife on the altar. I miss her too, Richard said quietly. Every single day. Lily didn't respond. I thought if I could fix things, make everything normal again, it would hurt less. For both of us. I thought giving you a mother would help. But I was wrong, wasn't I? You can't replace her, Lily said, her voice small. No, I can't, and I shouldn't try to. Richard put his arm around his daughter. She stiffened at first, then slowly leaned into him. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I'm sorry for this whole mess. I was trying to help, but I just made things worse. It's okay. It's not okay. But we're going to do better. I'm going to do better. Richard kissed the top of her head. No more auditions. No more trying to schedule healing like it's a business meeting. We're just going to take it one day at a time. You and me. Is that okay? Lily nodded against his chest. They sat there together for a long time, father and daughter, finally sharing their grief instead of hiding it from each other. That evening, Richard gathered everyone in the living room after dinner. Grace was cleaning up the kitchen but could hear everything through the open door. Ladies, I want to thank you for spending this weekend with us, Richard began. You've all been gracious and kind, and I appreciate you taking the time to be here. The women exchanged glances. They could hear the but coming. However, I've realized that this whole arrangement was unfair to everyone involved. Unfair to you, unfair to my daughter, and honestly unfair to myself. I was trying to solve a problem that can't be solved this way, so I'm going to end things here. I'll arrange cars to take you back to the city first thing in the morning. There was a long silence. Then Catherine spoke up. Is this because of Lily? Because she's been difficult? My daughter hasn't been difficult. She's been honest, which is more than I can say for myself. Richard's voice was firm. This isn't anyone's fault. It's just not right for any of us. Lauren stood up, her face flushed with embarrassment and anger. So we wasted our whole weekend on this? Do you know what I turned down to be here? I apologize for wasting your time. I'll compensate everyone for the inconvenience. This is unbelievable. Lauren grabbed her phone and stormed out of the room. The other women followed more gracefully, but their disappointment and irritation was clear. Only Nicole stopped at the door. For what it's worth, I think you're making the right choice, she said. Your daughter needs her father, not a stranger trying to fill a role. Good luck. After they'd all gone upstairs to pack, Richard came into the kitchen. Grace was wiping down the counters, pretending she hadn't heard everything. That went about as well as expected, Richard said dryly. I'm sorry, sir. Don't be. They'll get over it. He paused. Grace, I have something I need to ask you. Before he could continue, Lily appeared in the doorway. She looked between her father and Grace, then walked straight to Grace and took her hand. Dad, Lily said clearly, I've decided. Decided what, sweetheart? You said I could choose. So I'm choosing. Lily looked up at Grace. I choose Grace. The kitchen fell absolutely silent. Grace's heart stopped. Richard's eyes went wide. Lily, that's not... Grace started. I want Grace to be my mother, Lily said, her voice stronger now. Not them, Grace. She's the only one who's real. She's the only one who sees me. She's the only one who doesn't pretend. Grace felt panic rising in her chest. This wasn't supposed to happen. She was the help. She was nobody. She was just trying to be kind to a sad little girl. This wasn't... Richard stared at his daughter, then at Grace, then back at his daughter. His carefully planned weekend had just exploded in the most unexpected way possible. And Grace stood frozen, holding the hand of a child who'd just asked her to be something she had no right to be. The silence in the kitchen stretched out like taffy, long and uncomfortable. Grace could feel her hand sweating in Lily's small grip. She wanted to pull away, to run back to her little room and pretend this never happened, but Lily held on tight. Sweetie, Grace finally managed, her voice shaking. I'm your father's housekeeper. I clean and cook. I can't be. Why not? Lily asked. And the simple question hit like a hammer. Because Grace looked desperately at Richard, hoping he'd step in and fix this. But Richard just stood there looking like someone had hit him with a brick. Mr. Wellington, I apologize. I never encouraged this. I swear I never said anything that would make her think. I know, Richard said quietly. His voice sounded distant, like he was speaking from underwater. I'm so sorry. This is completely inappropriate. I should go. I should pack my things and no. Lily's voice was sharp, almost angry. She moved between Grace and the door, blocking her path. Don't leave. Everyone always leaves, the words hung in the air. Everyone always leaves. Her mother had left, even though it wasn't her choice. Nannies had left. And now Lily was terrified that the one person who'd been real with her was leaving too. Grace felt her heart crack open. She knelt down so she was eye level with Lily. I'm not going anywhere tonight, okay? I promise. But Lily, you need to understand something. What you're asking, it's not possible. Why? Lily's eyes filled with tears. Because you're the housekeeper? Because you're not rich? Because you're not white like those other ladies? Lily, Richard's voice was sharp. That's not appropriate, but it's true, isn't it? Lily looked at her father. Those ladies were all the same. They looked the same, dressed the same, talked the same. You picked them because they fit in your world. But Grace is different, and that's the problem, isn't it? Richard opened his mouth, then closed it. His daughter had just called him out in a way that made him deeply uncomfortable, partly because there was truth in it that he didn't want to examine. That's not what this is about, he said finally. This is about... There are appropriate boundaries. Grace works for us. She has her own life, her own family. You can't just decide someone is going to be your mother because you like them. You decided 5 women were going to audition to be my mother, Lily shot back. How is that any different? It's different because those women came here knowing what this was about. They were open to the possibility. Grace didn't sign up for this. No, I didn't. Grace agreed gently. She put her hands on Lily's shoulders. Sweetie, I care about you so much. These past 2 days, talking with you, being with you, it's meant the world to me. But your father is right. I have a life. I have a son who needs me. I have responsibilities. I can't just... I'm not asking you to marry my dad, Lily interrupted.
I don't want you to be his wife.
I want... The simplicity of it stunned both adults into silence. In Lily's mind, this wasn't about romance or marriage or any of the complicated adult things. It was simpler than that. She'd found someone who saw her, understood her, treated her like she mattered, and she wanted to keep that person in her life. "Oh, honey," Grace whispered. "It doesn't work that way. Why not? You said you care about me. You said I was special. Did you mean that, or were you pretending too?" "I meant every word. But caring about someone and being their mother are very different things." Lily pulled away from Grace's hands, her face crumpling. "So you are leaving? Just like everyone else? I should have known. I'm stupid for thinking..." She ran from the kitchen before anyone could stop her. They heard her footsteps pounding up the stairs, then the slam of her bedroom door. Grace stood slowly, her knees aching. She felt about 100 years old. Richard still stood by the counter, looking shell-shocked. "I should go talk to her," he said. "Maybe give her a few minutes to calm down first," Grace suggested. "This is such a mess." Richard ran his hands through his hair. "I was trying to help her, and instead I've made everything worse. And now she's attached to you, which complicates everything, and..." "I'm sorry," Grace said again. "I truly didn't mean for this to happen. I know. I believe you." Richard looked at her, really looked at her, maybe for the first time since she'd started working for him 2 years ago. "Can I ask you something? And please be honest, and of course, do you care about Lily? Really care about her? Not just as an employee who's being kind." Grace thought about lying, about maintaining professional boundaries and keeping things simple. But Lily had asked for honesty, and didn't she deserve that from the adults in her life? "Yes," Grace admitted. "I care about her very much. She reminds me of my son at that age a little bit. He was sad too after his father left. That same look in his eyes, like the world had let him down. It took years for him to trust people again. I see Lily heading down that same path, and it breaks my heart. So what do I do? How do I fix this?" "I don't think you can fix it. Not quickly, anyway. Grief doesn't work on a schedule. Healing doesn't happen because you arrange the right circumstances." Grace folded the dish towel she'd been holding, needing something to do with her hands. "But I think maybe you could stop trying to fix it and just be with her in it. Sit with the sadness instead of running from it. Let her know it's okay to hurt. It's okay to miss her mother. It's okay to not be okay." Richard was quiet for a long time. "My mother raised me to solve problems, to take action, to make things happen. Sitting with sadness, letting things be broken, that feels like giving up. It's not giving up. It's accepting. There's a difference." Upstairs, they could hear movement. Doors opening and closing. The women were getting ready for bed, probably still upset about the abrupt end to the weekend. Tomorrow morning, they'd all leave, and this strange experiment would be over. But what would happen after that? What would happen to Lily, who'd finally opened up to someone only to lose them? What would happen to Richard, who was trying so hard but kept getting it wrong? And what would happen to Grace, who couldn't stop thinking about that little girl's tears? "I need to go talk to her," Richard said finally, "before she goes to sleep thinking everyone's abandoned her." "That's a good idea." Richard started toward the stairs, then stopped and turned back. "Grace, I know this is a lot to ask, but would you stay? Just for tonight? I think it would help Lily to know you didn't leave the moment things got difficult." "Of course. I already promised her I wouldn't go anywhere tonight." "Thank you." He paused. "And tomorrow, before you leave, I'd like to talk to you about something. Not tonight, it's too late and everyone's too emotional. But tomorrow. Is that all right?" Grace nodded, though her stomach twisted with anxiety. Was he going to fire her? Ask her to stop coming to the house so Lily wouldn't get more attached? She couldn't afford to lose this job, but she also couldn't blame him if that's what he needed to do. After Richard went upstairs, Grace finished cleaning the kitchen even though it was already spotless. She needed to keep busy, needed to not think about the impossible situation she'd somehow landed in. She was a housekeeper, a single mother who'd worked her fingers to the bone to give her son a better life. She wasn't qualified to be anyone's mother figure except her own child's. But Lily's words kept echoing in her head. "You're the only one who's real." Grace understood what she meant. In a world of people who performed kindness like it was a script, who smiled and said the right things because it benefited them somehow, Grace had just been herself. She hadn't tried to win Lily over or impress Richard. She'd just treated a sad little girl with respect and honesty. And somehow, That simple act of being real had meant everything to a child who'd learned to see through pretense. Grace went to her room but couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about her own son at Lily's age. How angry he'd been when his father left. How he'd pushed Grace away, testing to see if she'd leave too. How it had taken patience and consistency and just showing up day after day to prove she wasn't going anywhere. Lily was doing the same thing now, in her own way. Testing to see who was real and who was pretending. Pushing boundaries to see what would hold. Around midnight, Grace heard a soft knock on her door. She opened it to find Lily standing there in her pajamas, her eyes red from crying. "Can't sleep?" Grace asked gently. Lily shook her head. "Want to come in for a minute?" Lily nodded and came inside. Grace's room was small and plain, nothing like the rest of the luxurious beach house. Just a bed, a dresser, and a small chair by the window. Lily sat on the bed, pulling her knees up to her chest. "I'm sorry," Lily said quietly. "I shouldn't have said all that stuff. I embarrassed you and made things weird with my dad." "You don't need to apologize for your feelings," Grace said, sitting in the chair. "You were honest about what you wanted. There's nothing wrong with that. But I can't have what I want. That's what everyone keeps telling me. My mom is dead. I can't have her back. And I can't make you be my mother just because I want you to be. I can't make anything be the way I want it." The defeat in her voice was heartbreaking. Grace wanted to scoop her up and promise her everything would be okay. But that would be a lie. Sometimes things weren't okay. Sometimes you lost people you loved and your whole world fell apart and there was no fixing it. "You're right," Grace said. "You can't make things be the way you want them. None of us can. That's one of the hardest lessons in life. So what do I do? Just give up? Just accept that everything is terrible and always will be? No, you do something much harder than giving up. You keep living anyway. You get up every day even when it hurts. You let people care about you even when you're scared they'll leave. You find small moments of happiness in the middle of the sadness. You survive. And then one day you realize you're doing more than surviving. You're actually living again." Lily was quiet, absorbing this. "Did that happen for you? After your husband left?" "Eventually, yes. It took a long time. There were days I didn't think I'd make it. Days I cried so hard I thought I'd run out of tears. But I had my son and he needed me, so I kept going. And slowly, very slowly, things got lighter. The grief didn't disappear, but it stopped crushing me. Does it ever go away completely? No, but it changes. It becomes something you carry with you instead of something that carries you." Grace leaned forward. "Lily, I need you to understand something. I can't be your mother. That's not possible for a lot of complicated grown-up reasons, but I can be your friend. I can be someone who cares about you and wants good things for you. If your father is okay with it, I can keep coming to the house like I have been. We can talk like we've been doing. That might not be what you want, but it's what I can offer. And you won't disappear? You won't just stop coming one day? I won't disappear. Not unless your father tells me not to come anymore, and that would be his choice, not mine." Lily thought about this. What if I'm still sad sometimes? What if I don't get better fast like Dad wants me to? Then you're sad sometimes. That's allowed. Healing isn't a race. Those ladies would have wanted me to be happy all the time. They would have wanted me to pretend everything was fine so it looked good. Probably, Grace agreed. But pretending doesn't actually help anything. It just makes you tired. Lily smiled a tiny bit. You really do tell the truth even when it's not pretty. I try to. Life's too short for fake stuff. They sat together in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Then Lily stood up. I should go back to my room. Dad probably checked on me and freaked out when I wasn't there. Probably. Grace walked her to the door. Try to get some sleep, okay? Okay. Lily paused in the doorway. Grace, even though you can't be my mother, I'm glad I chose you anyway. Because at least now Dad knows that none of those other ladies were right. And maybe he'll stop trying to find a replacement mom and just let me have a dad. After Lily left, Grace sat on her bed and put her face in her hands. This little girl was too smart, too perceptive, too old for her age. She deserved better than a weekend audition for a stepmother. She deserved time and patience and someone who understood that healing from loss couldn't be scheduled like a business meeting. Tomorrow, Richard wanted to talk to her. Grace had no idea what he'd say, but for tonight,